Good morning. I'm keeping in the Polynesian theme, the aloha spirit. It's fun to wear all my Hawaiian shirts. It's been a while. They've been resting, stored in the closet. It's funny how we part of our training is to learn to let go. And I still have a lot of clothes that I seldom wear, and then everything I read about getting rid of the excess points to me getting rid of some of my clothes. I got a lot of shoes too, and I only wear slippers now. And I got a lot of hard shoes, so what to do? I keep thinking that day might come when I might need to wear hard shoes again, but doesn't seem to be anytime soon. Ever since, just pardon me, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit so I can see a date. Ever since May 21st, when I switched over, when I kind of had after first dealing with it in my own way, dealing with the COVID-19, the coronavirus, I felt a tremendous sorrow for the suffering of the world. Fortunately, where I am, we've been, to date, unscathed. No cases in my town, in Taiwan in itself, has enjoyed a very low rate of infection because of immediate vigilance. People wear masks without being told. People social distance. We shut down the schools. It was interesting because it was kind of a continuation from the Chinese New Year, so it was kind of seamless. Chinese New Year's is the biggest holiday. It's usually 2 weeks of respite for the schools, teachers, and the rest of the working people get 7 to 10 days holiday. But this year was just a continuation. They just kept things shut down because it's already shut down. So it lent itself to being shut down easily. But my response to this kind of overwhelming sadness, overwhelming concern, overwhelming empathy, I responded with a video, with a sharing called Boundless Love, where I did my part to send all the love that I could muster out and about. And maybe this was exhausting. Maybe it takes more effort to send love than we're aware of. But anyway, any kind of concentration of projecting, for me, projecting energy. Energy is always in a short supply. I live in a world of, for better or worse, limited energy. So when I spend it on such a deep level, there's a obvious high of boundless love, and then it's opposite. I started talking about dark skies and about feeling the storm coming in. I think it was pretty much a responsive giving outward giving. And for every action, there's a reaction. So the reaction was to notice, to be immediately aware of the limitations of energy. Sure, there's an endless source that you can plug into, and I'm talking about my physical energy, the energy that my vehicle is gifted with. And so I had a bit of a a big up, boundless love, dark skies. And the dark skies was just kind of a forebinger of what's to come, the new normal, how the world was in a stage of transition, and we were going to live in a world that wasn't the same as the world pre-virus. Historically, I think it'll be pre-virus, post-virus. And it's going to be interesting to watch how it unfolds. It's coinciding with this change in consciousness, oddly enough, individual consciousness, because more and more people are waking up. There's numerous people who are in the process of awakening or are already awakened and contributing to the body of knowledge, the body of wisdom, through not only their words but their deeds and their life. It's an evolution, like personal consciousness evolution. And part of, I think, this new evolution of personal consciousness is generally rising of the consciousness on a worldwide basis. Part of it plays out that our dependence on the outer world is shown to be as unreliable as always has been, but it was masquerading. We pretended, we thought that the outside forces were contributing to our inner life, and rather than detracting, taking away. And the changing of the outer world gives rise, gives an opportunity, gives ground, gives room for a upwelling of personal consciousness. And so even though I saw the storm coming, the dark skies, I was reminded that it's always the darkest before the dawn. So the dawn of new times, new days, new consciousness, new awareness, new levels of human achievement in the realms of the spirit. And I look forward to the day when we all have awakened. We all woke up from our dreams. We all remember what we came into life having forgotten. So I talked about, and it kind of developed into, okay, I was totally outer aware, totally giving boundless love. When I had dark skies, like the storm was approaching from the horizon, I could see the clouds coming. And not in a negative sense, in a sense that the elation, the sunshine of being in a state of transmitting pure love, that sunshine was morphing, was changing into something else. And this is when I dove really deep within once again. I ventured out, but I saw immediate need to come in because that horizon represented something that the new normal was a signpost, a benchmark for me to be aware of, to help me to understand that personal transition period was commencing immediately. Immediately I began this process to transition. And it became obvious once I was aware that I was in a process of transition, that life was changing for me personally, spiritually. I went back to my old nemesis, my seeming nemesis, that elusive clarity that I strove through 33 years of strict adherence to Rinzai Zen. Clarity. That was the end game for me. And my misunderstanding, I don't know if it's my understanding or my misunderstanding. All I know is it didn't work. I know the consequences. This idea that you could silence the mind. Once the mind stopped, once it was silent, clarity would be gifted. Well, I've stated over and over through this documentation of this transition that it didn't happen for me. My mind was always noisy. My mind was always loud. There was no, in great, rare moments, I was able to quiet it. The most I could hope for on a consistent basis was taming it through ignoring it, understanding its nature, and I'm talking about monkey mind, and spending time dissecting the mind and separating the monkey, the noise, from the mind that had useful applications, and I learned them and I defined them and I practiced them and I taught my mind. I retrained my mind. Meanwhile, the monkey mind is it's doing its thing, right? But ignoring it. Say, yeah. I heard all that. There's good, nothing new. Nothing new there. And so taming kind of meant that it could result in quieting. But the transition point was recognizing that the monkey mind was for entertainment purposes only. Don't shut it up. It's funny as hell. It's our trickster. It's our individual trickster that celebrated mythology all around the world. The trickster, the coyote in the Native American, the trickster who's in many guises to fool us all the time. A sense of amusement. And that's the monkey mind. So I give the monkey mind its place. I just don't give it much time or any energy. The only energy that I might give to the monkey mind is to laughter, and this kind of mirth, this kind of self-laughter, laughing at the monkey mind, and laughing at yourself because you once believed, all of us, I once believed that the monkey mind was definitively me. I was my monkey mind was me. So here I did give up on this real strict. I said, okay. I started noticing, I said, okay, rather than focusing on the gifts I didn't get, or I don't appear to have gotten, let's concentrate on the ones that I have. And equanimity was gifted to me, and it remains the greatest gift I've received in my life. To be on an even keel, to greet the world from the same place, to deal with news, change, for the betterment or for the worse, with the same level of balanced caring, balanced participation, balanced in life, but learn to not A long time ago, I used to have migraines, and then I always am self-analyzed. I spent time with this, I gave it up for Lent. Many years, chemical change or whatever, mental change, I left migraines behind. But I used to, when I was still wrestling with this, and this is over 30 years ago, I noticed that times of great elation, being too happy, or being too sad, extreme depression, being manic from one extreme to the other, would result in a predictable migraine within as soon as that afternoon, or at least in the next couple of days. So I noticed that extremes didn't work for me. To be extremely happy, to extremely sad, eliminate that. And that was the founding of equanimity. But equanimity, I really came to notice it after my abiding, my permanent awakening. After the initial shock, after I had matured in my Buddhahood enough to start taking a look, instead of being in a state of shock, a state of newness, a state of not knowing, uncertainty, and matured enough in my Buddhahood that I could start the self-analyzation process. And that's when I saw equanimity. So it's not only that I've taken the confines of the emotional extremes to a more manageable range, frequency. I've learned further to open my hands and take what comes from the same state of calmness, serenity, peacefulness, to maintain that constant condition. And to not let anything, this is where equanimity is so useful, to not let anything interfere with that condition, that state, the state of being. Outside occurrences were governed, were mediated through my sense of equanimity, that gift. So I put clarity and said, okay, I won't be clear. And then I went through this whole process starting shortly after May 21st when I started focusing inwards. And I went through a whole series of evolutionary consecutive steps. I should go this way. And by coming inside, and then I remember let's see, unlocking clarity was the first one when I talked to. Okay, it came to me. This is the process. I'm in transition, and transition hopefully culminates in a transformation, a change that becomes part of a new process that will herald change yet again. The one constant I find in the universe is change. In my personal experience with the universe around me, it's unchanging when I go within. That's one of the most attractive aspects of turning within. It's constant. It's unchangeable. But the outside world is nothing but change. So I started saying, okay, It's been 6, 7 years since I gave up on clarity. Then I started unlocking it, and I went through whole steps of finding first. My process always not to find out what it is, but to find out what it isn't. This is how I use my mind to sort, file, store, and sometimes even access when needed. That's the caveat, okay? So going through this process of what it wasn't talk, it wasn't clarity of seeing, it wasn't clarity of hearing, it wasn't clarity of words. So then I'm kind of in a, okay, if it's not this, what is it? And then I went through a continual, I had the great experience of learning to appreciate moment by moment as a golden dawn. Each moment represents to me, each moment that I breathe in and breathe out represents to me the orb, the sun, just poking above the horizon, coming out of Mother Ocean. Seemingly, from water rises fire. And that moment when everything's golden, and I relive that and I bring that to the present. So that was pretty transformational, wasn't it? To greet each moment of life like the dawn in the golden dawn. So then I had an inkling. I had the first hint of something that it might be. It's always been not this, not this, not this. And I talked about hierarchy. I'm trying to find it. Clarity, hierarchies of importance. So maybe clarity is something about hierarchies. Quantifying experiences, quantifying information. Maybe and prioritize what's important, what's not important. And then I saw that I was well aware for months that I was in a transitional period. But transition leads to, hopefully, it could be extended period of time, but sooner or later you come to transformation. The end result of, or the beginning of the end, or the beginning of incorporating this change, this newness into oneself. And it had to do with clarity. So I got a glimpse of what clarity, first positive, what clarity could be. And what I understood through this process was, once I went from what it's not to what it might be, I'm getting close to transformation. So I talked about transition to transformation. And then I wanted to share the whole experience. I recapped it again with the last sharing I did. And I called it Journey Towards Clarity, where I shared that definitely, as definite as I could be about anything, I always have to condition my expectations, just in case. But this journey towards clarity, and I saw that this is the transition, the transformation, that clarity indeed was the end game of the transition. It was the transformation into clarity. And then I talked this, I'm rehashing, sorry. I talked about this journey. And you can only talk about a journey from a step back. when you're in the midst of the journey, there's no there's no sense talking about it much, because all you know is that you're caught in the throes of a journey, that there's movement, there's change, you're in transition. So I talked about this, and then I was so bold to say, at that moment I thought, I'm getting closer and closer. And at that time, I remember specifically saying, okay, when I arrive there, I'm not going to share what clarity means for me. I was going to leave it for you to discover. Okay, so I took you through the process because I thought, well, maybe it's interference if I share the consequent, if I share the conclusion, if I share that end result might in some way adversely affect this journey of someone who might be in search of the same. And then it happened. I had my day of revelation. And that's what I'm here to share about 27 minutes on. 27 minutes into this sharing. I seem to do this quite often. Build up to... Sometimes I start off right with a statement saying, this is where we're going today. And most times I like the scenic route. I like to stop and smell the roses, and then I like to share these experiences, share the journey, sometimes on a step-by-step basis. So I sat down in my meditation, and I've had great, most powerful, wonderful meditations, and it was revealed. The gift of clarity was so close that I could taste it. In fact, closer than that, I experienced what clarity was. The words that I'm using, the sense that I was driven all these years to find what I'd termed clarity. I became aware of what it is. And of course, like always, it can only be what it is for me. But like most gifts, equanimity, it took me a while to notice it. Well, I'm paying a lot more attention than I was in the earlier days. In the earlier days, after my abiding, my permanent awakening in the early days, I was caught up in the throes of, I talked about being a helpless infant, just discarded on the sidewalk. I felt alone, more alone than I'd ever been. I felt inadequate. I felt like I couldn't sustain myself. I couldn't provide for myself. Just as an infant on the sidewalk, just as hopeless and useless. And I got wrapped up into this, okay? So it took me some passage of time that I call maturing into Buddhahood. So this now, I'm paying more attention. It took me a while to notice that I'm still looking for clarity, but at that point, but then I said, oh, I got equanimity. What a beautiful thing that was. And it was totally involved and totally thankful and grateful and full of grace and appreciation that I'd been gifted with this jewel of equanimity, evenness. But it only took one day it's revealed to me, and I'm able to, well, I'm still in the process of incorporating it actually, but I'm able to get a good chunk within a 24-hour period, a good recognition of this gift. Now, I haven't evaluated it yet. I haven't decided how important, if it was the focus for so many years. Is there a little bit of a letdown? I don't think so. So I'm trying to find the nature of this gift of clarity, to understand how it's going to change me from this day forward. And I want to end this video with this, that part of this day of revelation, part of the gift, was that I had a responsibility to share it. I had a responsibility, unavoidable responsibility, to share my gift with any of those that are interested, any of those on similar paths, any kindred souls, or more generally, just out to the world. I remember my awakening experience, and I wanted to share, and I shared with a few people until I discovered that no sharing. This is best entered when you are awakening, when you awoke. It's best to mind your own counsel. Keep your cards close to your vest. Don't share, because people, number one, won't believe you. Number two, aren't prepared to believe you, even if they're so inclined. They don't have any awareness of what it means. So awakening is to be lived, shared through your life, shared through your actions, shared through your love. And you can talk around it. You can share with your words by talking around it. But it's better left unbroached until you've attained the maturity. You know when the time, I knew when it was okay for me to start talking about my awakening experience. And this time I know much quicker that clarity, what it means to me, what I use that word to encompass, what I use that word to include, to identify, is something that I want to share. It's available to be shared. In fact, it's mandatory to me to share it.